Okay, it shows that it's live. So now I'm going to check just to make sure that the show is live. Yeah, it was really strange last week. It just sort of completely disappeared. And it's like, so we had a kind of a panic moment, but we got through it. We just
Were you
kind of,
able to, could you recover it and put it up there later?
yeah, it actually, everything went fine. As far as like, of course, the recordings and as far as the YouTube, the YouTube show was kind of condensed a little bit because the first 16 minutes, I've got the pieces of it, so I may put it back together. I'm not sure, but we had one viewer and they disappeared. So I think we're going to be okay. We can start. So let me, yeah, we've got a reviewer. So, okay. Last week we didn't have any viewers to start. So I know the show is live. So, all right, we are going to start now. Here we go. Well, hey, everyone. It's time for Geocache Talk. Whether you're at work, in the car, or wherever you are, we hope you enjoy the show. Please give it a like and subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play so that you can get all the weekly Geocache Talk goodness. Big thanks to the Travel Bugs for the music and my patrons Doug Jones, Joshua and Caleb Slinkard, Tom Brotherman, Jeff Arbaugh, Deborah Burris, Joshua Johnson, Nick Hubbard, Andrew Teepkin, Cecilia Perez, and my new patrons, Sydney Sawyer and Velena Mahar. If you'd like to become a patron, head on over to patreon.com/geocache talk for more details. Patrons get path tags, coins, and other geocaching swag during the year, as well as invites to special events only for patrons. Support levels start at as little as $3 a month. And speaking of support, I still have, and I understand they're still available. I'm going to show everyone the geocaching coins from Treasure. They're still available. They're $25 a piece, and the proceeds are going to the promotion of the movie Treasure. And I know that it should be coming out in late spring, but we're really hoping the geocaching community kind of gets behind it. I have some information about the movie when I had on Chris, and this movie is really going to, I think, be the best geocaching themed movie up until this point. So everyone, if you can, oh, the other thing about the coin is if you buy the coin, when the movie is in a state of readiness for to be viewed, then he's going to give a special link to everyone who bought the coin, so you can see sort of an early, you can pre-screen the movie before the movie comes out. So that's kind of another benefit of buying. So you're not just buying the coin, which again the proceeds go to that, but you're also getting sort of a sneak preview of the movie. So very excited about that. So, well, let's jump right into show number 22 for Sunday, November 6th. I welcome my friend Russ Atkinson to the show. Welcome to Geocache Talk, Russ.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm so glad we were able to work everything out and for you to be on tonight and talk about lots of cool stuff. And we're going to do giveaways later tonight. So if everybody stick around, we're going to give away one of your books, either in electronic form or book form. And we'll kind of talk a little bit about it when we get to that point as to what we're going to do, how we're going to be able to provide you with the book. And Russ will explain a little bit more about that when we get to that point. And then I have last week's winner as well. We'll announce the winner from last week. So, Russ, I'm going to read a little bit. You've got I found a cool thing on Amazon, and we'll kind of talk through it. But sure. You served as an FBI special agent for 25 years, and thank you so much for your service to our country on that. You specialized in high technology crimes in Silicon Valley, and you worked on several cases we might be able to talk a little bit about just in general. Then you also have you retired from the FBI and you practice law, which I think is really cool. We'll have to talk a bit about that. And your degree in mathematics, just some fascinating some things you've done. But we're going to step back though, and we're going to talk about. We're first going to start with the geocaching because you are an avid geocacher, which I really find interesting as well. And so let's start first, if we can, with how you even got started and where did you first learn about geocaching?
Sure. Well, I remember it clearly. My wife picked up the local newspaper and said, "Hey, did you read this article?" And I'd already read the paper. And I said, "No, what's it about?" She said, "About geocaching." I said, "What's that?" And she said, "Well, I think it's something that you might be interested in." Um, so she knows I'm kind of into techie stuff and computer stuff, and that's kind of the way she looked at it. But I also am a runner and a hiker and all that. So I don't think she had much of an idea what it was, but she just thought it might interest me. So she handed me the paper and I read it. As soon as I saw the description, I just felt a surge of adrenaline and said, that sounds like fun. And I don't know if it was that day, but within a day or two, I ran out and bought a yellow E-Trek.
Right.
What was the
E-Trex 100.
E-Trex.
Yeah.
E-Trex 100. That's what it was. Yeah, that was
awesome.
my first. And those things weren't very accurate. But anyway, that's how I got started. And so after I got that, I went out and tried to find some geocaches. And my very first try was a DNF.
Isn't that the kind of the way it is with some people? And is the first one, because you're kind of not sure what you're looking for sometimes with the beginning, but you persevered.
I did, and it was funny because I think I took it to work, the unit, the next day, and I was working as a lawyer at that time, and so I was wearing a suit and tie like I normally did, and afterwards there was another geocache not far from where I worked, and I DNF'd the previous one, and I thought, well, why don't I just give this one a try? It looks pretty easy. Well, it turns out it wasn't that easy, and it wasn't that convenient. I ended up tromping through mud and bushes in my wingtips and suit.
Where's the video of this? We want the video of it.
I know. Well, I found the cache, and so okay, then I was hooked, and so that was awesome. My first cache. And then, like within a couple of days, I went back and I found the one that I DNF'd.
Oh wow, you avenged it quick. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you have what is your, not that numbers necessarily matter, but where you think you're roughly at find wise?
Oh, I think I have, it's around 2,600 something.
Wow. Okay.
Which is, I mean, considering that I started in 2002, so that's not a very big number for somebody who's been doing it that long.
Well, no, I mean, we're at 1,000. We started in 2006, so we're not really, but we've talked about on this show, numbers are sort of deceiving, I think, in that some people may perceive different ways based on their numbers, but it really kind of depends on the time you have to do it, and maybe the area you live in, and some other things like that. So
I agree completely, especially I think the area you live in is very significant. Now around here, bear in mind I'm in California, the Silicon Valley area, just south of San Francisco. It's got about the best climate you're going to find in the world.
Right.
You can geocache 365 days a year, and it's very rich in caches too. There's just thousands and thousands of geocaches all over they've got parks and all the hills surrounding the area and so forth. So
Hmm.
in this area, that's why we have Team Alamo, or Alamogel as he's known now, who's the world's most prolific finder of all in this area.
Wow.
So if you want to, you can have really big numbers around here. But I've just
Sure.
never been into the numbers. I'm one of these people who, if I go geocaching, I'll walk by 3 geocaches just to get the one that I'm interested in.
Right. There's and that's I think that's one of the great things about geocaching is um if you want to do like you're doing, you want if you want to do selective, you can do selective. Maybe you're interested in just puzzle caches. You're a geocacher. You just find puzzle caches. You don't have to, you don't have to mess with others if you don't want, or you may be looking to do a certain type of challenge. Maybe you're wanting to just work on your fizzy or your jasmer, and you're kind of like you said, you might pass up thousands of caches because you're looking for a certain date for a
Right.
geocache. So, well, that's interesting. So,
Well, you've touched on two points that are very relevant to me,
mhm,
personal to me.
right,
The I was really into the puzzles at one point, and I still enjoy puzzles, but I don't do them nearly as often as I used to. Partly because of the geocaching partners and friends that I've had over the years, but I sort of burned out on them a little bit too. And
yeah,
but I've worked on the Fizzy Challenge. In fact, I've completed the Fizzy Challenge.
awesome,
So yeah, so definitely when I was into the puzzles, that's where I would go for the puzzles and skip all the regular ones. When I was doing the challenge, then I'd focus on that, and that's
yeah,
fine. Everybody has their own thing.
yeah, and I think that's the to me that's one of the wonderful things that there's such a variety of ways you can sort of and you can switch over time like you said if you get tired of one thing you can easily switch to something else. So you mentioned people that you do were going out. Do you normally cache alone or do you cache with some other people?
Right now, I have a regular geocaching buddy.
Hmm.
His geocaching name is Bobbles, Bobbles.
Hmm.
I met him actually uh, playing guitar on Meetup.com. We both play guitar, play
Oh,
similar
wow.
styles, and he
That's
lives
awesome.
not too far away. So when we first got together, that's what we do is we play guitar and so on. He's a retiree like me, so we have free time during the week. So so we were getting together, but he also likes to hike, and so it turns out he knew that I was a geocacher. I mentioned that, and he mentioned that he'd given that a try with his son, but his son wasn't interested in it. So I
Hmm.
kind of recruited him and said, "Well, why don't you try it with me? I don't have a geocaching partner right now."
Sure.
And so he gave it a try, and we hit it off. So now every other Monday, that's what we do,
That's
and we're
awesome.
doing it tomorrow. I just printed out a map, got the
Awesome.
map right here, with the park and the caches marked out. So
Oh boy, Russ is
yeah,
old school. He's
definitely.
putting
Yeah,
stuff
I don't
out.
even have a smartphone, so I have a GPS unit anyway. But over the years, I've had different partners. When I started out, I was a solo cacher because I didn't know any other geocachers. But I started going to the events and met a number of great people, and many of them are still my friends. And I still geocache occasionally with those folks, especially
Yeah,
I still go to the events, and many of the
sure.
old timers are still there.
Hmm.
Um, but I did have a regular partner for years. Philippe GPS is his
Okay.
name. He's
Hmm.
a Belgian geocacher. He
Oh,
was out.
wow.
He was out here in California back in the early days, 2002, 2003, when I started. That's when the .com boom was really going, and
Right.
he ran a venture capital firm for a European company
Oh, wow.
out here, and and he lived real close. And I met him at an event, and we just hit it off. And I liked his wife, and it turns out my wife speaks French and traveled in France, and we got together. Our wives hit it off, our families hit it off, so we ended up just being family friends as well, going to movies and dinner together and that stuff. And Philippe and I were really into the puzzles, so we would go out all the time, especially doing the puzzle caches, but hiking as well. So he was my regular partner for several years, at least 3 years. But then the .com bust happened, and
Right.
so he ended up having to go back to Belgium.
Wow.
But I still stay in touch with him. We created some caches together, and I've taken over some of his caches, and I'm still maintaining some of those caches of his. So he was my buddy for my geo buddy for a while, and then but in between times, and even while I've had regular geocaching partners, I've still gone out with other people.
Sure.
Bobbles doesn't do the puzzles, so I'll still go out with other people to do puzzles, and I go out there. Sometimes groups get together. I've gone out with a number of groups where they get together to do a challenge, a challenge run or something.
Yeah.
Fizzy squares up in a certain location or something like that. So it's varied. I don't have just a single fixed, geocacher group or partner.
Right. Yeah, I'm very similar in the sense that most of the time, it's, Slinky Mom and I are the ones going out together. But actually, one of my buddies is in the chat room that we create a group. It's the Motley Caching Crew. Get it? Motley Crew, Motley Caching. Okay. Never mind. Anyway, so bunch of guys, we'll go geocaching together for a day, and then we go eat barbecue. That's our tradition. So we need to get together and do that again. We've been missing some of late, but that's kind of neat to have different people. We were at Geo Woodstock. We would go with other people, and so like you said, it's kind of fun to go with different folks. So now, do you mostly cache in your state? Do you get to now that you're retired, but yet you're doing other things? Do you travel much now, or are you pretty much like to be a homebody most of the time?
I'm mostly a homebody, so I cache locally. I've done some traveling, but I geocached a fairly broad area. I went to Europe and visited when I finally retired. After I retired from the FBI, I practiced law, and then I retired from that.
Right.
Was finally retired. My wife and I went to Belgium and got together with Philippe and his wife.
Right.
And did a lot of geocaching there, although we did other things too, and did the touristing. And so I geocached in Belgium, Netherlands, and Denmark. We had friends in Denmark too. Got to stay in the government house supplied but to the legal attaché, who was an FBI agent that I used to be my squad supervisor.
Wow, that's cool.
In Denmark and in Copenhagen. So I geocached there, and then within the United States, I've had occasion to travel for various reasons, and I have made a point to pick up caches when I'm there. But I haven't done a lot of travel for the purpose of geocaching. Kind of when I was getting real near the end of the Fizzy challenge and realized that I had a good chance of finishing it, then I did take some trips, especially with other local people here around, mostly in California. But I had a good friend in Utah that I visited, and I was going to visit him anyway. And I picked up 3 important Fizzy squares there.
Yes, Utah is one of those spots in the country that is like, you want to finish Fizzy, Utah can be really important.
Yeah, in fact, in my most recent book, my novel, Behead Me, so a couple of those real geocaches feature in that book, and the character Cliff Knowles is trying to complete the Fizzy challenge too, and he goes for those particular caches which are still active.
That is awesome. And we'll talk about protect the books and the FBI in a minute here, but that is neat how you've been able to kind of incorporate it, and that's also the book we're going to give away tonight later. right?
That is correct. Yes.
Awesome. Giveaway to a lucky live listener, and so everybody stick around a little bit while we'll give that away. So, what? And this is going to be tough, Russ. I know. Based, we don't have all. We have more. We only have an hour, and we've spent some. So I know you have to condense this answer down a little bit. But what is it about geocaching that you find interesting and intriguing, and what does it really kind of mean to you?
Um, well, obviously it has a number of aspects, and as you say, I'll condense it down. But it it's especially important now that I'm retired. It gives me something to do. It's a form of exercise, and that's
Yeah,
important to me. I've
that's
always
very
been a
important.
runner,
Yep.
and especially now, Bobbles really likes the trails, and that's mostly what we do. And it's pretty hilly around here if you've ever been to the Bay Area, and so there's a
I
lot of
have.
climbing.
Yeah, there's some
Yeah,
hills for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
The one we're doing tomorrow is a very steep trail. I've been on it before. Um, so anyway, there's exercise, but clearly the most important aspect to me is the social aspect. I've just met some great people. It's, uh, I mean, when you're sitting home, I love my wife,
Yeah,
but
of course.
24 hours a day, just one other person here. My kids are out of the house. We don't see them that much anymore. So it's great to get out and just socialize with somebody else too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And so I do the events, and not just with one particular partner. Bob is a really good close friend. But I like to go to the events as well, and just see some of the people I haven't seen in quite a while. Some of the old timers come out every once in a while, but not very often. So that's the most important thing. It also gives me a creative outlet. As you can tell, I'm a writer, so it's one of these things that I have this urge to always be creating something, something that other people can enjoy. And so I've been able to do that with geocaching. I think that was, in a way, my first writing outlet, because I own a lot of caches. I just looked up the number before I came on the show. It's 96 that I put out.
Wow, that's
Most,
great.
and only about, I think, 38 or so are active now. A lot of them
Sure.
are puzzles and have
Hmm.
kind of stories involved with them. And some of them even have some simple code. I'm not really a programmer, but I've been able to hack out a little bit of uh, JavaScript or something, and for for some puzzle caches. And
Yeah.
so creating stuff, and I got some crosswords on there and so on. So creating stuff like that people can have fun with is it's been a big reward for me too.
Yeah. That is. Yeah. That is very cool. So, let's talk about some of these things that you've just you really have had a fascinating career, Russ. It reminds me of a funny movie I saw. I don't know if you ever seen it, Buckaroo Banzai, across across the
No,
eighth dimension. You haven't seen that one?
no, I guess not. No.
Okay, well, he's a scientist. He's a rock star because he plays guitar. He solves mystery or solves crime. He's kind of like he kind of spans a lot of areas. So finding out that you play guitar is really cool based on everything you've done. So let's kind of talk about we'll talk about the books in a minute and how that came about and how you've tied geocaching in with your books. But before that, we talked before the show a little bit about how you almost didn't even go in that direction, and you went into you dabbled in the possibility of sitting and coding for your entire life, but you didn't do that.
Well, that's true. And yeah, it's one of these things where, of course, that was. Uh, I won't pretend to be a young guy anymore. I mean, we're talking back in the '60s, and when I was draft bait for Vietnam, and I learned how to not program, but how to operate IBM mainframe computers. That was my work study job in college. So I took a job, I graduated from college with my math degree. I took a job operating these computers at Fairchild Semiconductor. And after a while, they were able to figure out that I knew maybe one step more than some of the other people who were loading the tapes onto the tape drives. And they offered me a job programming. But it didn't, if I'd had the imagination of Steve Jobs or Steve Wozniak and known what was coming in Silicon Valley and personal computers, maybe I'd have taken it. But back then, programming consisted of COBOL forms,
Right.
shipping products and inventory, and I didn't want to spend my time doing that. So
yeah. So so instead of doing that, you ended up in the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Right. I went to law school. Went
to law school. Right.
I ended up not having to. I wasn't drafted. I got a high lottery number. I looked out there. The older people here will know what a big life event that was. And so I went to law school, and then right out of law school, I took the bar right out of law school. But then that fall, after I did that, I went right into the FBI and spent 25 years in the FBI. Bounced around the country a bit.
Yeah, amazing. 25 years. Is that why I say it like that? What do you think a career is? That a normal career time for somebody back then?
Yeah, it is. Now, keep in mind, the FBI is law enforcement, and they sort of compete with the police in a way, and it's considered a hazardous job, although it's really not. I mean, the average liquor store clerk has a more dangerous job than an FBI agent, at least most of them, unless you're on the HRT or something. But the bottom line is, it's a law enforcement job, so it has early retirement, just like police do, And so most agents come in. I was younger than most agents. I was in my mid-20s. Most of the agents were right around 29, 30, 32, 33 kind of thing. So they put in their 20. If they put in 25 years, they're in their late 50s, and they have mandatory retirement at 57.
Oh, really? Now, is that still in place, or?
Yeah. Well, when I went in, there wasn't any, but then they put it in at 55, and then they decided that was a little too early, so they stretched it to 57. And but I got a good job offer you can retire at 20 and 50, which is typical police formula.
20 years, 50 years. Okay, 20 years in at 50 years old, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I got a good job offer at age 52. My kids were just in college right about then, and I couldn't pass up the money for double dipping,
Yeah.
So I ended up taking a job in high tech. I didn't go right into practicing law. I worked for a high tech company in the corporate security for a couple of years, and actually for a couple of different companies. That's when the .com boom was big.
Right.
And then I got laid off in the .com bust, and that's important because that kind of led to my first book being written when I was out of a job.
Which is you've got 6. The first of the series though doesn't have any geocaching, but
right, because that was 2001.
Okay.
And I hadn't ever heard of geocaching. I guess it existed. It started in 2000, but I didn't know about it.
Yeah. Very
at that time. So yeah, that was Held for Ransom, and I wrote that in about the first draft. I wrote kind of from beginning to end in 6 weeks because I had this compelling story I wanted to tell. It was largely based on a real kidnapping case that I'd worked in the FBI. It was the most intensive week I had spent in the FBI.
Wow. Wow. Because there's obviously different areas, just like any kind of large organization. The FBI has different sort of, I wouldn't say, they're not really called branches or divisions, or different divisions of the FBI.
Yeah, they have different divisions. Well, they have both geographic divisions, and then they also have, uh, you know, criminal division, legal division,
Right,
you know,
specialties, and one of your
so
specialties
on.
was in that
Right.
um, um, kidnapping and extortion kind of areas,
That,
or
that was at one point, yeah. Kind of the first half of my career, I did foreign counterintelligence, and I don't touch on that because it's all classified, and I really can't
yeah, can't
talk
talk about
about it, and
it.
it's not in my books. But
Right.
you know, but I switched over to criminal work, kind of about halfway through or 2/3 of the way through, and went to the high tech squad in San Jose, which is, of course, the kind of the heart of Silicon Valley. And that squad, high tech crime at that point, you know, we weren't really talking cyber stuff so much as hardware theft. They were doing truck hijackings, uh, where they were stealing the chips and the disk drives and all
Yeah.
that stuff. There was software counterfeiting, so that was kind of white collar. You know, there was, but I mean, it was copyright infringement where they were copying the disks. It's not hacking or anything like that. They were actually these Chinese companies were putting out fake Microsoft,
Right.
you know, Windows CDs and so on. They're selling them and all this kind of stuff. So, but one of
Because
the things that
I was gonna
happened,
say 'cause I read this book, or I listened to it. My wife keeps telling me, "Cashed Out," which I loved. Just to let everybody know, this is a cool book, but it made me kind of think of a question, which is one of the things that Cliff does, and I don't know, is dumpster diving for information. Is that sort of the non-glamorous? Was there a lot of non-glamorous days in the FBI? Because we always think of the movies, and all the cool stuff the FBI agents are doing. Freeze FBI, but
it's real.
is,
I dumpster dived. In fact, one of the big cases, not actually the one that is kind of touched on in
in the
Cashed
book.
Out, but in
Hmm.
one of the later books,
Hmm.
the really in Behead Me, that's also based on some real cases.
Okay, cool.
In that case, although I don't think I'd put it in the book there, but it happened in real life where I went dumpster diving a number of times and ended up breaking that case that way. So yes, you know, I don't have time to tell you all the
Right.
non-glamorous stuff, but I've been, I was on a surveillance squad where I was sitting in a car in New York City in the summer with no air conditioning, with a
Oh wow.
smoker and the windows rolled up, wearing a suit,
Oh no.
just sitting, waiting for somebody to come out of a door for 8 hours. So I'm thinking
Uh,
I went to law school for this, but
yeah.
it's all part of the job. Surveillances are killers. Just so to answer your question, yeah, it's nothing like what you see on TV. No
Right.
gunplay. One time in my entire career did I ever have to pull a gun um, on somebody, and that was when I was mugged in the New York subways.
Oh my goodness. So
Yeah.
of all people to pick to mug, and they pick an FBI agent. I mean, that's not really that's kind of like trying to hold up a gun store or something.
Well, except that it was 1 a.m. in the South Bronx, and I was a white guy in a suit in an area where there are no white guys at 1 a.m. So
Right.
I don't think they figured it out, why it was possible I would be there.
Right.
Uh,
Or
so
you were armed at the time.
yeah, I know. I mean, what they might have, if they'd given it some thought, they might have figured out why would a guy in a suit be up here. But
Exactly.
anyway,
Yeah. Was so so I'm disillusioned, Russ, because I was assuming that Cliff Knowles, the cashed out story was true story.
no, it's definitely not a true story. Although you'd be surprised, I've heard about some, uh, some geocachers finding dead bodies.
Right.
Maybe not a
Yeah.
homicide victim, a wino in a vacant lot or something like that.
Yeah.
But there are a few things in there. Like there's a secondary story. Some of the the corrupt, if you will, security company, private security company, that's
Sure.
based on a real case. Okay,
Hmm.
and I don't want to get into the details there, but
Sure. Well,
it's
but in the book, like you said, there's some. I really, and that's the first one I've read. I'm definitely going to read the rest of them. But I picked that one. It was your first geocaching story, but there's there is some intrigue sort of toward the end, like you're talking about how there was some of that. Hey, if you do this for me, I can get you tickets, and it's kind of a there's this that corruption that you talk about in the book toward the end is kind of interesting. It's like, ooh, this is interesting because we always hear about those kind of things where you show up at a certain time and I'll get you tickets, and then you can kind of scratch my back and do certain things for me, and um,
yeah. Well,
so
there
there's
are a lot of law enforcement people now, sheriffs and policemen, deputies, and so on, who have second jobs, are able to moonlight in the private security area. Typically, there are rules. They have to pass that by their lieutenant or captain or chief or something like that and get it approved. It's not always
right.
allowed, but I think there's some. I know that some of that goes on. That
Yeah.
guys will do favors. And you wonder how some of these private eyes can get criminal records and driver's license records and stuff like
Right.
that.
A lot of things that unfortunately like we all know that we hear about the bad apples, and so of course that leads to the whole, well, they're all corrupt. It's like, well, we know that's not true, but unfortunately, it's kind of like anything when you hear where you've got a couple people that are doing something wrong, and it kind of ruins things for a lot of people. But well, so um, you what interesting about that book, and we'll move on to some other stuff. But in that book, what I found fascinating, and looking forward to the other books, was the fact that um, you you incorporated geocaching into it I found in fascinating in such a way. And again, that's a really good book, I think, to read, because you've it you did such a great job of taking the sport that we're all passionate about and be able to incorporate it into the story and into your some of your experiences. So um, without giving away the plots of the rest of your books, what are some other things that I'm going to look forward to as far as what you've done with geocaching and Cliff Knowles and some of your other books, even up to Behead Me?
All right. Okay. Well, um, as you mentioned, Cashed Out is heavily centered around geocaching,
Right.
and it actual not only is there a lot of geocaching in it described in it, but the knowledge of geocaching, kind of just the rules and the practices and experiences, are instrumental in solving the mystery and in the plot line.
Right.
And
Right.
that one and Death Row, which was 2 books later, um, is much the same. Death Row is really a follow-on to Cashed Out. So there's a lot of geocaching in it, and there's knowledge of geocaching and so forth that is important to the plot line in that one. Now, let's just go back to the first one. I mentioned that the first one, Held for Ransom, doesn't have any geocaching in it. The actual plot takes place in the 90s, because that's when the actual original crime took place, and the technology is consistent with that.
Sure.
Um, but then I wrote Cashed Out. That's geocaching centered, and the main used the same main character, but didn't carry over any of the plot or
Right.
other characters. And then and he's retired now. He's still he's former FBI at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then the next book in the series is Fatal Dose. Now that
Hmm.
definitely has geocaching in it, and I think it's important, but not in the same way. it's important from the social aspect. He's introduced to Ellen, who eventually becomes the female interest in that book and others. We'll just leave it at that.
Sure.
And so the romantic interest,
Right.
and through geocaching. So that brings in the social aspect, and to me, that's a very important aspect. We even here in Silicon Valley, there was a wedding between two geocachers, which was an event cache. And,
oh yeah, what a great idea.
Yeah. So I mean, romance can blossom through geocaching.
Yeah,
and my wife has gone geocaching with me, although she's not really a geocacher per se. But my son used to work up in Seattle, and we used to, we'd travel up there, and she's done the 8 cache with me and all that kind of thing. So
yeah,
that's all part of it.
Yeah, I've heard of people who propose by planning ahead, obviously, but they put the ring, or they put a note in a geocache, and they propose at a geocache. It's kind of neat, but yeah. So 6 so far. Behead Me came out. Was it about this time last year that it came out, or when did Behead?
No, it's this year. It's February, I believe, is when it came out of this year. So It's less than a year old. Yeah, and it's got a lot of geocaching. We passed over one, and that's the
Gut Shot.
Gut Shot.
Right.
And that's a little kind of different story. It's told all in the first person. And it's funny because people have told me they didn't even notice that, because the other books are kind of written from Cliff Knowles' standpoint, but they're written in the third person. Or the writers out there, would-be writers, that's kind of an important point.
Yeah.
A decision you have to make. But anyway, it's kind of Cliff Knowles himself telling the story, and it doesn't have much geocaching in it. There's a little bit of it here and there. But if that's an important thing for you, I still think it's a good. I think it's just as good as the others. I really like it. It's based on a real incident too, to a large extent. Although all these things, bear in mind, even the real cases don't involve murders. You have to. Everything's fiction in here. I have to turn them into exciting stories.
Sure. Well, and that's the great thing about the
real FBI. You touched on that. It would be boring to write a book about 8 days in a row sitting waiting for somebody to come out of the door, sitting in a car.
That would be can you imagine a book of, well, Cliff is once again sitting in the
anyway, so you get
the passenger side now, and he's waiting, but and
he has to take a leak, and there's no place,
right? No place to go. Well, hey, you got a story working now.
That's real life. I'll tell you that. But anyway, so Gut Shot. Anyway, if what you want is a geocaching story, that's not the one for you. But anyway, then back to Behead Me, which I think has just a really good mix between geocaching, which is important to the plot, and there's quite a bit of it in there. Not as much as Cached Out, but enough to keep the geocachers happy. But it's also kind of a warm and humorous. It's probably the most. The closest thing, if you know the term cozy mystery, that's something in the industry. It's about the closest thing you're going to get to a cozy mystery of Cliff Knowles thing. So anyway, and it's also the only one that's won awards, and it's selling pretty fast. So I think it's probably it hasn't sold as many as Cached Out yet, but I think it'll end up being the second most or even most popular of my books.
Well, cool. And that's something you and I even talked about before, is that, and I think it's important that, the books are not just for geocachers. If you have a friend who is interested in FBI or mysteries or anything like that, don't feel like you can't get this book for them, and because they don't geocache, therefore, this book is not for them, that kind of thing. It really does. When again, I'm only speaking from, I read Cached Out. So I'm speaking from the experience of reading that book, but is that I loved it because the geocaching, but I really loved it also just because of the intrigue of the story and the mystery. If you're into mysteries and kind of the whodunits, you have some really great twists. I give away the story, but while I was reading it, like anybody who reads a book, you're like, oh, I think I know. I have a real good idea of who I'm thinking is the person that's involved in these murders that he is kind of gets caught up in, and then you're like, oh no, he switched it. No, it's somebody else.
Yeah.
So and then
Well, that's important. That's what I'm going for.
yeah. And what's funny was that I was reading it and I was thinking about it, knowing that you're going to be on the show, is that when it ends up being the person that it ends up being, just to let you know, I'm reading it, I'm thinking, is that the person that he's wanting me to think it is? And it's somebody else. So you really had me going really all the way up until almost the end of the book. So I really appreciate that. So again, if you have friends that are interested in those kind of books, by all means, give it to them. And you never know, they may come back to you later and go, this has some geocaching in it. I'm kind of interested in the geocaching part now.
Well, thanks for that plug, Gary. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think of myself as a mystery writer, not a geocaching story or geocaching mystery writer. It's I don't think of Sherlock Holmes mysteries as violin mysteries or
Right.
mysteries.
Right.
Things
Love
that he
Sherlock
does.
Holmes.
But certainly geocaching does play a big part of the plot itself in some of them. So anyway, so that's part of it. And I want to thank you for mentioning that you listened to Cached Out too, because
I did.
Fellow geocacher is the voice actor on that.
That's very cool. And you two were on Podcaster, right? Together. Okay, very cool. So everybody go check out one of Sunny and Sandy's. Go through the archives and find the one with Russ on that show. You've also been on GeoGearheads.
Yes.
So definitely check that one out. You can all go back through and find those and listen to Russ talk some on that one as well. So, so are you planning a 7th?
I am. I'm working on it. I wasn't working on it today. I was working on it yesterday, though. So I don't can't reveal much about it. I will never commit because I don't know when I'm going to finish it. I don't know for sure. I have a tentative title in mind, but it does. It's not heavy on the geocaching. There's already some in there, and I'm planning to put some more in. But if you're a fan of the series, I think you'll like it.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, no, I understand. And you write, you're not writing in such a way, like some authors, they're like forced by a publisher, I got to have a book by this particular date. I don't know if those are still, if things are still done that way, but you don't really have that. Nobody's forcing a deadline on you except yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, okay. I'm self-published. And so and it has its advantages and disadvantages. The advantages, I can write whatever I want at whatever pace I want and the way I want, and just don't have to keep either readers or publishers or editors happy or an agent happy. The disadvantage is I don't really make any money at it, but I managed to stay in the black. What I like to tell people who ask me, how much do you make on it? I say, I make beer money, and it's a good thing I don't drink as much beer as Cliff Knowles.
It's true. It's awesome.
Because I wouldn't be able to afford that much beer. It's just, it's really a hobby that pays for itself. Is the best way to think of it.
That's a really good way to put it. So, yeah, well, that is very cool. So one thing that intrigued me, I want to talk about briefly. Everybody's just going to have to kind of put up with me for a minute about this, but you are interested in cryptography some. In fact, you were were you the president of the American Cryptogram Association?
Yes, I was for a couple of years.
Okay.
And that's a hobbyist group. It's
right.
Just civilians, and we work on classical ciphers that were typical from World War II prior.
Right.
Anyway, plus some that have been made up just as hobby type ciphers as well. So there's about 50 or 60 different kinds of ciphers that we do in the American, call it the ACA, American
Yeah,
Cryptogram
ACA.
Association.
Right. What's interesting about that is one of the guys in the chat room is a big. Well, I've got a couple in the chat room. They're big puzzle cachers, and so Tom Brotherman, Electric Water Boy, who writes a lot in FTF Magazine, which is one of the sponsors. By the way, for the YouTube watchers, I've moved for now the sponsors to the iTunes version of the show. So if you're wondering why I'm not mentioning the sponsors, is because it'll be added to the show tonight and be included in the iTunes portion. But what's interesting, and I'm going to have on Jennifer of Team AJK, Team Magic next week, and talk a little bit about puzzles and how to create puzzles. But there's a puzzle that is fascinated me, and we kind of talked briefly about it. And I kind of want, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I do want to talk a little bit about this thing because I found it recently and it kind of intrigues me, which is Kryptos. It's a sculpture that was created. Now it's in front of the CIA, Russ, as you and
Right.
You've actually been to the location. I don't know, the FBI and the CIA. I assume they get along sometimes, or
Yeah, I mean, TV likes to show all conflict. I mean, TV and movies always, especially television, but books also like to show the police and FBI is not getting along well, and other agencies, as you mentioned, CIA and FBI. The reality is that we cooperate a lot, especially in the counterintelligence area. The basic difference is the CIA is out there collecting intelligence, and we're out there trying to prevent the bad guys on the other side from spying on us. So that's
Sure.
kind of the split. And the FBI headquarters in Washington, CIA's in Virginia. But our agents go over there for training. Their people come over to the FBI for training. So they're sharing. And yeah, I was there once, but it was before the Kryptos statue was there.
Right. So you've been there, and obviously can't tell us why you were there, but the sculpture I think is interesting, and it gets into what you're talking about as far as cryptology goes. This guy put a statue or a monument sculpture. Sorry, if anybody's interested, I got it in the show notes. Show notes, by the way, can always be found now on the website. There's a whole show section of the website for the show notes, in case you're wondering where they've gone. But apparently 3 out of the 4 encrypted messages have been solved. The sculpture contains 869 characters in total, 865 letters, and 4 question marks. And I think that he wanted to, or he assumed that it would be, it would take a while to be solved. And he released it. Let's see, it says in 2006, he released the information stating that a letter was omitted for aesthetic reasons. So they were able to kind of 867 letters is part of a encryption thing in that. So it's interesting though that he added those in. Is this something the FBI gets into a lot, do you think, or is this more or do encoded messages and ciphers in today's world, is that mostly, you think it's mostly foreign type work, or do you think that
well, that's a good question. Yeah, I know where you're going with this. I've been asked this a number of times, and bear in mind, I didn't do cryptography for the FBI myself, although I was a case agent. The story on Fatal Dose involves some cryptography. I'll just leave it at that.
Hmm.
And I was uh, in the role of Cliff Knowles for a while on a related case that is modeled after. But the FBI still does have a cryptography section. They aren't trying to break the foreign intelligence services things, or that's the NSA,
Because that's the NSA. Yeah, I was gonna say that's a whole. Yeah.
and so forth, and maybe the military or whoever else. I don't even know. But the FBI has a unit, and typically what the kind of stuff they deal with is like gang communications, for example.
Right. That's what I was wondering if that's used.
Yeah, like in the prisons, communications from inside the prison to outside, for example. Um, they don't have access necessarily to cell phones, and where they have got encryption apps and all that kind of stuff. So there are messages are passed from the gang leader on the inside to the minions on the outside, that kind of thing.
Sure.
There's you see them in other places. There's like the Zodiac killer. That's one that's always knows about. That's the kind of thing the FBI gets into. So things like that come up. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because Tom mentioned he says that cool looking puzzle sculpture, and then Deborah mentioned it reminds her of the show Numbers.
Yeah.
So very interesting.
Okay. Yeah. As just on cryptos, Jim Galogly is the first civilian to have solved it. Apparently, there was a CIA physicist who actually solved the first stage, or first maybe even 2 or 3 stages.
Right.
But that was kept secret because he was active CIA. But Jim Galogly was a computer scientist, and I think he taught at UCLA, and he's a former ACA president also.
Oh, very cool.
And he's the first civilian to have solved it. I mean, he solved the first 3, I believe, and but nobody solved the 4th final cipher on that yet.
So there you go, everyone out there. Go out to Cryptos and solve the 4th one. Let me know when you do. It may even buy you a spot on the show at some point. Talk about cryptology. But interesting. Those those kind of things, of course, fascinate me. And like you said, Limax, who was on the show last week, he is now he's a member now of the ACA. So again, civilians can join the ACA. So Tom. And others that are like a friend of ours, Jason, lives about an hour from here, Redicer. He's big into puzzles, so I got to send him a note and say, you need to go join the ACA because it'd be kind of fun to be part of that. So,
and you should mention that Cashed Out has several puzzle caches, and at least the first one is a cipher.
Yes, Hail Caesar, right?
Hail Caesar, yeah, which was based on a real cache. It's archived now, but it's based on one that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been copied around. I don't know if I was the first one or not, but I've seen a number of copies, similar ones, probably come up independently around the country.
Right.
Or even in Europe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like Germany, places.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple concept that I think everybody will understand. It's based on the Caesar cipher, but. So if you like the puzzle caches, you got them there and cashed out. Yeah,
and you have several in California, so I'll come out there. I can do some hunting around and hopefully not find any weird things when I go to the final stage.
No, I'm pretty mundane on mine. I put out a couple of clever hides, but mostly I figure if you've solved one of my puzzles, you deserve to have the find.
Right.
So I got my share of lampposts and.
Sure, but if you're going to solve a puzzle, you're not going to make the final like unbelievably hard because.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
That's just my philosophy. I've never enjoyed hunting for caches. Frankly, I've enjoyed finding caches.
Sure.
I've enjoyed the experience of going out the hiking and the social and the planning it and mapping it and all that. But looking around and being frustrated because you can't find it, that's not an idea of a good geocaching day. Some people think, oh, that's good. It's just all part of the experience. But no, I just assume find that thing.
For some people. Well, Well, we look forward to, and I really look forward to doing reading the rest. I'll eventually, I'm probably gonna read the rest and then go back and read one. Is that they're not really, they're not tied in the sense that because if I didn't read
Well,
one,
you're right. Start with if for you, I would say start since you've already started with Cashed Out. Just keep going
two,
till the end,
and then
and
go back.
then when you finish, go back and do the first one because it doesn't
Okay,
carry over. You'll recognize some of the characters that appear
right,
in that first one that
sure.
have appeared in the later books, but
Okay,
the plot doesn't carry over at all.
okay, cool. All right. I'm looking forward to that. Well, we've got a couple things to do here. We're going to give away a book. Also, want to mention, so everybody get ready, get into the chat room because I'm going to ask a question here in a moment and give the book away. I did have some people send in from last week. And so I put them into good old random.org, which is really nice. And punched the number, and up came a number, and it happened to be Deborah Burris. You win the coin. So Deborah, I'll be sending you. It's the only ghost you'll find on Halloween. So Deborah, you are the winner. So everybody, whenever you when I have a if I have a mail-in one or for email, make sure and send them in because it's not necessarily the first person that sends them in. I use random.org, and then I actually not only do random.org, I look away and I punch it a random number of times, so it's like random on top of random, and then whatever number comes up is the number of the person. So anyway, so that's the winner of this. But we got to give a book away, Russ. So I'm going to ask a question based on hopefully people have been listening at least fairly carefully to the show tonight. We'll find out. But one of the places that Russ did work help me out. It's a place you possibly would have ended up working, but you didn't go to end up working for them. You did programming for them briefly.
Okay, yeah, that was Fairchild.
Oh, you gave away the answer. Let's do another answer then.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you're going for. Okay,
It's okay. So we'll go for something else. So, let's see. Oh, I know a good one that we talked about earlier that people might remember, which is what you got your degree in. So if somebody would tell me in the chat room, what did Russ get his degree in college? College way back in the day. He mentioned, and it's also on your, it's also on Amazon on your link there. So
and let me just make sure so you don't get complaints from people. You're talking about undergraduate degree, right?
Undergraduate degree, yes, your undergraduate degree. So
all right,
yes. So undergraduate degree, and it looks like Deborah's going to be a double winner tonight. It was in mathematics. Is that correct?
that is correct.
Yes, Deborah, you're the first double winner ever on somebody else. Oh, somebody else mentioned mathematics. So thank you for mentioning that. But so Deborah, I've got your address, so I'm going to get the information to Russ. And now she's in Arkansas. Russ, does she get a? Do you want to give it? Do you want to give it away? You want to give away the hard copy?
It doesn't matter if it's in the U.S. It doesn't matter. I'll give her a signed paperback if that's what she wants. We don't have not hardbound, but
Okay.
A paperback book if she wants a signed copy, or I'll give her a Kindle. Either way.
Version. Okay. So Deborah, let me know which of the versions she would like. Which is interesting because she is a associate professor in physics in Central Arkansas, and I think Deborah, are you? She wants the actual book. So Russ, we're gonna send her an actual book for that one. But so Deborah, are you? I think she's working to becoming a full-blown professor. I think she might be getting close to that. But she is she's in Arkansas. She came to one of my events actually.
Okay.
So very
Well,
cool. And so looking forward to getting that to her. So she's halfway through promotion to becoming a full-time professor. So,
well, she might like Fatal Dose. That has some physics in there, some hefty physics, actually.
oh, cool. So, yeah, she needs to get into that. So, did you ever think about? Is that some area that you thought about doing, Russ? Is something in the teaching world, or not
Well,
really?
I thought about it, but the opportunity just never came up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Sure.
yeah.
Cool. And you have a blog that I want to mention if I can, for people to go check out. I checked out your blog. I really liked it. It's a crazy name for a blog, I guess. Maybe you can explain why but it's blog. It's in the show notes, but it's blog.ackgame, ACK, like acknowledge, like I remember
Right.
from ackgame, ACKgame.com/onwards, and onwards is all one word. But where did that title for that blog come
Yeah,
from?
well, I have a website called ackgame.com, which is my
Oh, okay.
domain, because I created a game called Ack, and
Right, like
ACK.
acknowledge, right?
Yeah, well,
ACK.
and more like Ack, something bad has happened. Okay,
Oh, like that instead of
an
like.
exclamation Ack.
Right. I'm
Okay,
thinking too much of my IT
yeah,
kicked in
no,
and
right, right.
okay, so it's more
But
like
anyway,
more like
yeah.
Gadzooks.
So that was kind of my, the creative thing that I did. I just put it out there. Anybody can download it. It's just a little word game, and it's uh, I don't know if anybody even plays it anymore, but I still play it, enjoy it.
Okay.
Anyway, so I had that domain, and then when I wanted to install WordPress,
Right.
I had to put it in I created a subdomain called blog, because I was going to create. Actually, I had another blog called electric caching, because I have an electric car, and that was for a while I was blogging about
Oh, wow.
geocaching in a environmentally kind way, instead of driving hundreds of miles,
Uh-huh.
in your gas guzzling SUV.
Right.
Do it, electric way. But I don't think that ever caught on. I don't think that's necessarily a popular way to go. But anyway, so I got rid of that point. But I already had the blog. Anyway, long
Yeah.
story. So anyway, the blog is mainly about writing the words. So that's why it's on words, kind of a play on
Okay.
words.
Very cool.
O-N, capital words.
Well, we'll have to. If you're willing, I'd love to have you back on sometime. Even next year, we can talk more about that. I'd love to talk about. Do you still have the electric car?
I do. It's a Leaf.
Okay.
It's great, but it
Sweet.
does have a limited range, so it's not suitable for long distance geocaching.
Right.
Use it
Well,
all the time around here.
that'd be neat to talk about. Well, Deborah's all into the ecology of geocaching. She rides a horse to her geocaches. So
I
there you
did
go.
one. I did horseback geocaching, and that's in one of my books too. I'll let you figure out where it is, and that's in Behead Me,
Oh,
and
okay, great.
it's one of my best all time geocaching experiences.
Awesome. So Deborah, horseback geocaching in the book you won. I tell you, it is your night. So anyway, well, it's great. Well, something I mentioned about coming soon to the show. Next week, I have Jennifer of Team AJK on the show. We're going to
Hi,
talk.
Jennifer.
Yeah,
She's
look
a buddy of
forward.
mine. I've geocached with her, and
Oh, sweet. That is awesome. Yeah. Well, she'll be on next week. We're going to talk something specific. We're going to talk about puzzle creation, and not just solving puzzles. So that'll be fun. Talk about something sort of specific. She was on Cache and Release when I was on Cache and Release, and so we're going to talk puzzle creation, which is interesting. Though, by the way, I want to really plug everything she's doing, because next week is sort of puzzle week, Russ. Jennifer's going to be on Geo Gearheads on Thursday that week, but on next Sunday she's going to be on this show. So it's kind of puzzle week for podcasts. She's going to do ciphers, by the way, on next that Thursday. So
Okay.
everyone definitely don't miss that. Don't miss that show. The week after that, I'm going to have on Jeff Arbaugh and Teus, and we're doing something interesting. We're going to do a show on Now What. Something, Russ, it would be apropos to what we talked about tonight, which is you're at the cache site, you're at ground zero, and you can't find the cache, which can be very frustrating. What are some things you can do? Sort of advanced geocaching is what we're going to talk about, and I've titled that week show Now What? Now what do I do? I'm here, but I can't find it. So that's going to be on November 20th. Then on November 27th, I'm going to have on Craig Michelle. He's AKA See My Shell. He's an Aussie geocacher, and he's going to come to us on Monday. The show's on Sunday, but we're like 12 hours different for the show. So, but I made sure I cleared it with him. I was like, now you realize the show is at 8 p.m. my time. Is that okay with you? And he's like, yeah, everything's good. So I'm going to have him on that's a Sunday of Thanksgiving week. Of course, he's from Aussie, so I don't think they celebrate our American Thanksgiving down there. So, and then I'm not going to talk about tonight because I'm going to make a very special announcement, but December 4th is going to be a very special show, but I want to mention it ahead of time to everybody who's listening to the show because this is, I'm pretty certain I can, and I think I can verify it, but I'm pretty sure that no geocaching podcast has ever done what we're going to do on that show. And so very special night. And I will talk more about that show and make a special announcement later, probably this week. But anyway, make a note, December 4th, for everyone listening and watching, please try to make a portion of that show, and you'll understand why. And keep listening to understand why. It's it's going to be an incredible show. I've been working on that one. Very interesting, very unique, I think, to podcasting. So anyway, well, Russ, thank you so much for being on the show and talking about this. And time goes quick, but maybe next time we talk more about maybe your law years in your law and order just law.
Order to. Well, let me give your viewers one more freebie, a special thing only your viewers are going to get. This weekend, well, Friday and Saturday only, I believe it is. Mm-hmm. One of my books is going to be free in Kindle version. So, wow. I'm not announcing it or advertising it anywhere else. So,
awesome.
Listen, I'm not going to tell you which one. You're going to have to research my books and watch. But if you do that, you can get one of them for free.
Oh, great. Now, what should they, how are they, how do you go
to Amazon and find me, search my name or the names of any of the books I've talked about. You can find me there. And they always list all the books by the author, Russ Atkinson, at the bottom.
Right.
You can check them all and see what the price is. And one of those days, Friday, Saturday, one of them is going to be $0 for the Kindle version.
Oh, sweet. Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you, Russ, for doing that for our Geocache Talk listeners. So there you go. See, we're just giving stuff away every like left and right. So this is awesome. Well, again, thank you so much. Well, we hope everyone that you enjoyed the show tonight. Please email me your comments at geocachetalk@gmail.com, and obviously keep track of things in the future because you never can tell. You might win live on the show, or you could send me an email sometimes. I kind of mix it up. I don't want to always do the same thing every time, but send me an email and you could easily win when we give things away. Try to give things away often. So don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Geocache Talk, Facebook at facebook.com/geocache talk. Show can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, as well as the Geocache Talk website. Don't forget to click on that subscribe button down below. I'm at like 89. I'd really like to get to 100. When you get to 100, you can do some extra things on YouTube. So please subscribe. Even if you're iTunes listener, take a moment when you get a chance. Please go to to YouTube, and please subscribe to my channel so you can see and hear the show on a weekly basis. Until next week, don't just talk about geocaching or read a great series about Cliff Knowles, but get out and also go geocaching. So good night, everyone.